and we're now starting this webinar, and I'd like to welcome our panelists for today. First of all, we have Lisa Beyer. Morning, Lisa.
Hi, Sally. How are you? Thanks for having me as a guest on this webinar. I'm happy to share my thoughts about this very trendy topic right now.
Isn't this exciting? It's all working.
Yay.
Yay. So Lisa is the president and CEO of the Beyer Group. She writes for Search Engine Watch and, of course, is a speaker at many places and will be at the SES conference in San Francisco next week. So if you're in the Bay Area, you can meet and greet and see her there. And I am the president of Pressfeed, the social newsroom. I also write for Compro.biz, and my blog is Proactive Report. And my book on press releases and news content is available on Amazon, and it's called Smart News. And we're very lucky to also have with us today Joe Loratro, who is the founder of Tandem Interactive, Smart Fellow, one of the first certified Google AdWords professionals. Good morning, Joe. Thank you very much for being here to answer questions for us about all the technical stuff.
Good morning. My pleasure.
So let's talk about this new Google pronouncement they've made about press releases. Is SEO still important for PR, Lisa?
Well, I think that there's still plenty of ways to optimize public relations. This new update, definitely we need to follow with Google's best practices, but I think optimization with public relations and social media is still very important, and it's going to help us reach the journalists, bloggers, potential customers, investors, so it should still be definitely part of the agenda.
Great. But from my point of view, I really think that we have to still pay attention to SEO because we have to get our content out there. It needs to be found. And it's going to be found by many more people than just the journalists. It's going to be found by potential customers, investors, vendors.
Definitely. Joe, what is your opinion on SEO being part, or public relations being part of SEO?
So let's split public relations and online press releases a little bit here, because public relations and SEO is probably going to be more important than ever, because I think traditional PR mixed with online PR is going to be very valuable to drive the links that we were getting somewhat easily through pure online press releases. Now, online press releases will still have value because you're still putting out good content. It's just Google's very specific now that they don't want to see online press releases littered with keyword anchor text, which is where a keyword phrase is linking back to your website. There still has to be links in there because if somebody does read a press release and like what they're reading about, they have to be able to easily get to that company's website. So just the rules have changed a little bit. Instead of being content heavy on keywords, now we've got a nice plain HTML link at the bottom or something like that that will drive people back. So it's still part of it.
Great. Hang on a minute, I'll get this to move right now. There we go. So what does have to go into SEO for a press release still? Do all of these still apply? Lisa, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same, the same basic procedure for search engine optimization when it comes to press releases and content. We just have to be a little bit more careful and follow the rules. And I think from a public relations standpoint, I mean, I'm a firm believer in how SEO and public relations go together. I've been kind of connecting the dots for years now, but I think to a lot of public relations professionals who maybe haven't been doing this and it's new to them and they maybe have just getting into it, it's a little bit intimidating having these big Google updates come out and kind of scare them away. And it's almost like what I'm afraid is going to happen is that where public relations can help so much when it comes to when public relations and SEO can help and work together, that public relations is going to be afraid to do some of these things. So the keyword research, the trends, the placement of keywords, they're all very important when putting together, especially an online press release and any type of online content and social media optimization. It's all critical. I think all of these steps are critical.
Great. So this is Google's thing. They made this big pronouncement that a press release is actually regarded as an advertisement, and that we should really not be trying to use them to pass what they refer to, or some people refer to as Google juice, then be using it strictly as an SEO tactic. So what is it that we should be watching out for when they make this kind of a statement? This includes any behavior that manipulates links to your site or outgoing links from your site. What is it that they mean? What are they talking about?
Joe, do you want to answer that?
Joe, do you want to answer?
Certainly. All right. So again, the big change here is that Google specifically called out using anchor text links, which is where you use a text phrase to link to another website. So from a press release, if you used a anchor text phrase, so let's say the keyword would be Google's link rules, and you're using Google's link rules as the anchor text, and then you're linking that to Google's page about the new link rules. I mean, that's the way we were optimizing press releases and actually most content for the past 10 years. What Google came out and put in their policy now is that they don't want any behavior that's manipulating this. And the reason why they called out press releases specifically, and article submission services are right there with them, is that it was too easy to put out a press release with 5 good keyword anchor text links, and that press release gets picked up by 1,000 scraper sites that then are linking back to your site. So it was too easy to control the external or inbound links to the site. Most of the rules that they changed or they got more specific on really target where site owners had the ability to create the external links versus the external links being created by the second and third party sites. So
Right.
now I'd say that the rule is really down to very simply, I mean, have one link to your website and make it either your company name or make it a plain HTTP link, and not really be optimizing for keywords until the online press release services give us the option to have what's called the rel no follow. And to not get into the super details of that, it should just be like a checkbox that allows you to tell a search engine through using what's called rel no follow that don't count the value of this link.
Right. For those of you who are not familiar with that, it's in the coding, it's a tag, so it's not something you have to worry about. But as Joe's saying, once we get a little further along with these rules, the Newswire services hopefully will make that available to us, but we haven't seen any right now as yet. And there's been a few questions. Yes, this is being recorded, and the PowerPoint will be available on SlideShare afterwards. Now, we have a question here about how do you find the keywords now that the free keyword tool has been closed down, and they have the keyword planner. It's just slightly different. I have a blog post up about it with some screenshots. If you go to compro.biz, you'll find it there, how to use the keyword planner. So this is a quote that was from Matt Cutts. He's the head of Google's web spam team. And he said, "I'm not against doing press releases. Press releases can be a useful part of getting traffic and building a brand. But for ranking in Google, however, the main benefit of a press release is not direct links, as Joe was just saying. It's primarily the people who decide to write an article and link because of that." Now, as PR people, we really should understand this. This is third-party endorsement. This is exactly what PR is all about. This is what we do. So their point is just that if you are making the link yourself in a piece of content that you have created, then Google is not counting that as an outside third-party endorsement. They are looking for the editorial coverage. So it's kind of like the same thing as pitching, and then you get an article and how that reflects on your brand because some media company talked about you. Google operates on that same basis, and that's exactly what they're looking for. And they've said, look, a press release is great, but we're not going to count what you put as a link in your press release because we regard that as owned content and not earned, which we always, as PR people, that's what we work for, is earned media. So that's the thing you should be looking for, is the earned links. And in terms of page rank, I just want to, just so that you know, it's from Larry Page's name, PageRank. So they're the two guys who started Google. And it's just their way of figuring out which pages are the most important and which ones have the most links leading to them. So again, it comes back to who else is linking to you and giving you their kind of good housekeeping seal of approval by voting for you with the link. So you see, as I was saying, they think of these links as a vote. So where another page is casting a vote, a page with a higher page rank has more weight. So if you get a link from the New York Times and the New York Times has a very high page rank, the fact that they link to you counts more than if Mary on the corner links to you. So they have a lot of ways of looking at who's relevant, who's important, and why should we bother with this link. But all of that means that they're looking at the value of the link, just as the same as if we get something in the Wall Street Journal, we think that that counts more than if we get something from a small little weekly somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. It's exactly the same system. They are actually operating on a PR system, and we should really understand that. So here's one that they gave as the example. If you have all these links like this, there are many wedding rings link on the market. If you want to have a wedding link, you will have to pick the best ring. This just gets ridiculous. First of all, it reads very badly. Joe, do you want to comment on this?
Yeah, so I really like this example because this is the worst of the worst, and this is where SEOs were taking over online press releases and putting out garbage content for the sole purpose of getting the links. This change makes the web a better place, but this change also, I think, financially hurts the online press release companies because I guarantee a pretty good amount. I mean, I would easily say 50% of online press releases were probably done for this purpose. It could have been even higher, and now hopefully that the online press releases are going to be much higher quality, and it's got to help the industry that this change has actually been implemented.
Perfect. So how do we do it right? This is the Google Webmaster Guidelines. Do you want to walk us through it, Lisa?
Well, I think, I mean, from my point of view is that, based on what we're talking about, is that we're looking at quality over quantity. So trying not to put out, just a press release every day for SEO purposes, and finding that quality content and the quality stories, and that will attract the quality media and the quality customers and the quality prospects and the quality investors and down the line. So what Google is saying is the best way to get other sites to create high quality relevant links to yours is to create unique relevant content that can naturally gain popularity in the internet. And Sally, like you were saying, we're putting out a press release that is written today. Press releases need to be more in a journalistic editorial style to attract the journalists and the editorial staff. So putting out that quality press release, we want to attract that Wall Street Journal type of story and to us that's a win. And so that will then trickle down and attract different types of coverage. So creating good content does pay off. Links are usually editorial votes given by choice, and the more useful content you have, the greater the chance someone else will find that content. Everybody always asks me, how often should you do a press release? And my answer to that is as often as you have a good story. So that could be more than once a month. Hopefully it's maybe a couple times a month or 2 or 3 times a month, I think, just to show that you're having activity, newsworthy activity happening in your company. But there is not any type of end-all be-all to how many times you should do a press release per month.
Perfect. Thank you. So, should we link or should we not link? Joe?
So I say link, but link sparingly. I mean, I would put the link. You know, the old rules was have a link within the first paragraph, 1 link per 100 words. I would say right now it's maybe 1 link per press release, and it should not be a keyword optimized anchor text. So it's either the company name toward, like in maybe the boilerplate, or it's just an HTTP link in the boilerplate, and that's abiding by the rules today. 6 months from now it may be different, but I think any press releases going out in this quarter, I mean, it should follow that rule.
Cool.
And I think that this is making the lives of the PR professionals a lot easier, because you don't have to worry about where to put links, how many links, how to do the keyword anchor text anymore when it has to do with press releases. So really this is just like simplifying the process, but still pay attention to all the other things such as keywords and other ways to optimize the press release.
But we do still want to have our content discoverable, right?
Definitely.
So all the rest of the SEO and optimizing still applies. Should we be optimizing press releases?
Definitely. I mean, I think the list that you had earlier is the checklist that all PR professionals should follow, and it's still, I think, very valuable for public relations professionals to understand search engine optimization so that they can understand how they can work together with the SEO teams and PPC teams and really have a joint effort versus working in separate, kind of separate departments or separate divisions.
And for me, this is something that goes back to what was a bit of a misinformation in the industry, which was you want the press release to rank for your website versus the press release ranking on other websites. I don't think that was ever a valid argument. I think that if a good press release gets out there and ranks on a reputable website and somebody searches for a keyword and that press release shows up, it looks more like a third-party endorsement and therefore stronger for driving real business to your site versus having just a PR piece sitting on your website that may or may not rank.
Yeah.
And maybe that doesn't matter anymore, and I totally agree, Joe, but I still think that it's important to have the press release still on your domain, whether it's the blog or the newsroom, so that in case anything ever happens to that content, it's always going to be on your site. You'll always have control over it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what we were just talking about. Now, talking about links, we've had a question from one of our attendees saying, so what if you do a joint press release and you need to link to more than one entity? Now, we also have had feedback like this from Tom Forensky, who is the founder of Silicon Valley Watcher, and he was one of the first journalists to start talking about the social media release format and the necessity to put links. Journalists actually ask for links in press releases. So now we have Google on one side saying, don't put links in, but journalists, who is one of our prime targets for press releases, say they want us to link to other relevant material. They're not talking about SEO links. So this is not trying to do anchor text links. They're just saying if you reference something in a press release, I would like you to link to it so that I can go and find it. And the same would apply to a joint press release. When you're talking about something you've done with a partner, you would need more than one link. So how are we going to deal with that? Lisa?
Well, I mean, the way I interpret it from Google is that they're not saying you're only allowed one one link per press release, but the way that what they're saying is that if it's going to help the user to find more information on what the press release is about, and as long as the link is not formatted like anchor text link, then that is acceptable. What is your interpretation, Joe?
So I think this is probably one of the greatest points of the whole thing, and this is what bugs me about what Google said, because taking out press releases in general as using that as a bad SEO tactic, I think was unfair because of exactly this reason. But Google answered this already by saying, if you're going to do this, and let's say you're doing it because you want the journalists to be able to have access to that content, then you have to no-follow the links, which is, again, that rel no-follow. So then pressure has to be put on online press release companies today to give that option, because that option was not available a month ago, and I don't know if it's available right now.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that with the coding of it, so depending on which service you're using, that you could probably manually code it into the link, but that seems like it's more work than is necessary. I mean, the services should just have an option that you check the link as no follow, and then you're within Google's guidelines, and you're still giving the journalists exactly what they're looking for.
So we have a question, Joe. Does this mean you should never, ever, ever use anchor text to your own website in a press release?
Okay, so I saw a tweet from John Henshaw from Raven that said the new mix of SEO is I think it was something like 10% skill and 90%, to rephrase what he said, guts. I mean, there has to be some risk-taking in SEO, and saying that there should never ever be an anchor text link is unreasonable for sites to rank. And the sites that are going to rank are going to push the envelope. It's just, what's your risk tolerance? I still wouldn't take a press release and do a press release today the same way I did it 3 months ago, but there's a lot of things that have changed that I wouldn't do the way I did 3 months ago based on these new guidelines. But you still have to push the envelope a little bit. So maybe you start by putting one anchor text link, or you're more careful about how you do it. But yeah, I mean, we can't just abandon anchor text, because Google is kind of clearly saying that this stuff did work, and that's why they're having to tell you not to do it anymore, because you're making their job harder.
Right. So we're having questions here, Joe, on what is this no-follow? What does it actually mean?
Sure. So no follow is a tactic that came out it was first published by Google. I think it was roughly 2006, and it was designed to help really bloggers not have links in their comments that they didn't trust. So the rel no follow in its simplest form is a way to communicate to Google that you don't trust that link. You're not giving that link your vote of confidence. When it first came out, it was manipulated by SEOs, like most things tend to be, and it was used in what was called link sculpting. So with link sculpting, imagine your website is a balloon full of water, and your link value can escape either through one little hole or through 1,000 holes. Well, with rel no follow, SEOs that were really good at it could control that link flow through a website. So the rel no follow, after that, again, Google's good at what they do. They recognized it was being manipulated, so they said, well, rel no follow still is relevant, but we're going to choose whether that link passes value or not. So you could get a link in Wikipedia. The Wikipedia, by default, all links are rel no follow. However, Google may decide to count that link from Wikipedia. It's their call. So you're just being completely above board by using the rel no follow.
Okay, so we also have questions on how is it possible for someone who doesn't know how to code, or how do we do this?
So I think online press release services need to make this very easy, and they needed to do this 3 weeks ago. I mean, and potentially this should have been around for a long time, but it should just be a checkbox. If it's beyond that, Sally, I could work with you, or I mean, I'm sure you could probably do it. Just a simple post.
Yeah,
on
why
what
don't
the
we
code
put
is.
together a nice blog post and then we'll send a link to everybody via email and just lay the whole thing out.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, I think
that's what we'll have
the best
to
way.
do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have another question here. What about publishing a press release on the company website with links to other websites that company owns? Does that also count as a no-no?
Lisa, you want me to grab that?
I mean, yeah, I'd like to hear your opinion, and then I'll comment on it.
Okay, sure. So my opinion, and Lisa and I talk a lot about this, is there should be at least 2 versions of a press release, and potentially even 3. So let's have version A is the one that goes out on a wire, and that is going to be the absolute cleanest version of the press release in terms of links, optimization, and such. Version B is the version that goes on the website. Now version B, as long as it's sitting on your own website, you can go nuts with the keyword anchor text and optimization. It doesn't matter because you're just linking to yourself. If you're outbound linking, again, same thing. I think if you're outbound linking and it's from your own website, you're giving somebody value that they're on your website and you're giving them a resource for that information. So I'm perfectly fine with that. And then the third version is a streamlined version that potentially is socialized. So that could just be an abstract of it or something, and that's what you're putting on social media and trying to get people back to read the full article. But as long as the article is on your site, you can do the most with it. But it does have to be spun a little bit differently. It shouldn't match the article that was put out on the wire. It should be, you know, a good 20 to 30, 40% different in terms of content or content additions, content optimization.
And not just for the sake of Google and whether or not it's within Google's best practices, but also for the sake of your customers and your prospects that might be following you or finding you in search, or then they're going to connect with you on Facebook or Twitter. They don't want to see the exact same headline or the exact same message across all channels at once. But if you change it up a bit and you have it, a little bit of a different spin, a different headline, maybe take out a stat and use the stat in the tweet instead of the headline. All of these are different ways that you can optimize it and also create different types of content, but basically talking about the same story. And I think the only thing that you really need to worry about with the links is when you're doing the paid version of the press release. But if you have it on your own site, like Joe said, then that's a different story.
Sure. I have a question from Stacy, and she says, I'm supplying my own press release where I link back to our site. Is that okay? Lisa?
Say the question again?
If she writes a press release where she links back to her own corporate website, is that acceptable?
Yeah, I mean, I'm picturing it to be the press release, and then at the very end of the press release is the website that it's linking back to.
Right.
Is that what she's saying?
Yeah. So as Joe was saying earlier, you certainly can do that. That would be your one link.
Right.
And it would be preferable if you write it out completely, http://www and the entire link. That would be better. And we have a question on what is an anchor text link. That just means that you have used the words. Where we showed you that one where it said wedding rings and weddings, they were all underlined and they were all links. So the words become the link. That is anchor text link. Oh, so there's a good question here. What do they do with all their archived press releases that have all these links in them? How do we deal with that, Joe? Should they go back?
Yeah, that's a really big question at the moment because, I think it's impossible, like truly impossible to go back and fix that as a problem, because while you'd be able to fix it at, let's say, a MarketWire or PR Web or a PR Newswire, they'll fix it because you still have access to that site. What happens to all those sites that scraped that content and posted it? There's no way you'd be able to address all of those sites, nor do those sites go back and check and make sure they've got the latest version of the content. So, I mean, this is a really tough question at the moment, but I think it has to be something that's being checked moving forward. So let's say your site gets flagged and a manual edit, an editor from Google does a manual edit on the site, and they look and they're looking at backlink profile. I have to believe, and I'm sure the next major search conference will have a better answer from this directly from Matt Cutts or somebody pretty high up at Google. But if they find predating this, that tactic being used, hopefully they will just devalue those inbound links. Where post this guideline being released, I think that you may actually get a penalty for still utilizing that tactic.
Right. So we do have a question here which says, I've put links in my press releases because very often a reporter will use that content verbatim, including the links, and that's good for our ranking. Well, that's the whole point of this update, isn't it? Joe?
Yeah, well, no. No, actually, I would say, so if a reporter, like Lisa was saying, if the reporter grabs the content and posts it, and it's a real reporter putting it in a real spot, then that's great.
Doesn't matter if they took your link straight out of your press release?
Well, moving forward, the links, you shouldn't have those links, but moving forward, like you could send a reporter a press release with more links in it than you're actually putting online, putting in the paid version, and help that reporter out, doing it that way. And you know, that's one way around it, so that you're still providing the media with more links in the press release to help them out, where they don't have to go and research and, you know, then put the links in themselves. I think that's huge. And also another advantage is, you know, is to have it on your online newsroom. Have the press release version that you are posting on your online newsroom with all the links that the reporter can just scrape and grab without having to do all of that work themselves.
Right, right. So we do have a comment here from Sue Myers saying that Business Wire has started doing the no follow.
Good.
So yes, as we said earlier, you should all check with whichever wire service you're using how they're handling it.
Yeah, we've been working with a couple clients, Joe and I, consulting, and it wasn't Business Wire, but it was one of the other wire services where they basically said there was nothing they could do. But this was right before the update happened, so I have a feeling that they're going to be
They might have to find a way very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might just be a really good motivator. Okay, so I have another question here. How about linking to the social media platforms, your own social media profiles, in your boilerplate of a press release? But now that means you're going to have a link to your website, a link to your Facebook page, a link to your Twitter feed. As long as you put the no follows on them, I'm sure you're going to be fine. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of a problem here, because this was traditionally a great tactic for reputation management, that you would use just branded links to your social media sites to help your social media sites rank for your brand terms. With the new rules, I mean, maybe you throw one in there, but I don't know that I would, in the boilerplate, I would have a link to your Twitter, your Pinterest, your Google+. I mean, maybe take turns and throw one extra one in there and rotate them. I wouldn't, based on the rules right now, I really wouldn't have 5 links sitting in the boilerplate.
What I would do as an alternative is I would have the link go to, if this is your strategy and that you want to have all of the social media links in your press release, and now what do? I would have the link go to your online newsroom and make sure that the landing page on your online newsroom is the hub and has all of the social media, whatever your social media channels and networks right there, ready to grab.
That would be a perfect way to do it. So just to clarify, we have a question here. In the example where it was weddings, wedding rings, getting married, whatever, where were those links going to, asks Tony. Well, we're assuming, I mean, I don't know, I didn't write that. That was a Google example, but they would probably be going to pages on that company's website that they were trying to rank higher. Do you agree, Joe?
Yes, I think I've looked at the example, and again, another really good tactic prior to this change was that you only linked an anchor text to one individual page. So if there was 5 links there, technically all 5 of those, by best practices of SEO, would have gone to different pages within the site. I think that, and that example is live, you can mouse over, I think you can mouse over it, that like 2 or 3 of them went to the home page and 1 or 2 of them went out, a little deeper in the site. But they were all going to their own site.
Okay.
I can check that real quick, actually, see if they're live links or not.
All right, so let's take a look at what can you do now with a digital release. They're good for driving traffic to a website, so you still can have your link, one link to go to the traffic. But I agree with Lisa, the best place to send them to might be your newsroom, because you can put a lot of information in the newsroom, your images, your videos, all your releases, your blog posts, your Twitter feed, links to all your social sites, all the things you would want people to see should be in your newsroom, if of course you have the newsroom that you should have today. It can certainly increase the visibility of your PR content and make it discoverable, because you should still be optimizing. It should lead people and journalists to related content. That's what we were talking about. If you mention something like another article, a study, an infographic, you need to give them the link so that they can go and see that. Most important, that you would spark interest from a journalist or a blogger that would lead to a story, and it will create that natural editorial link that is so prized by Google. That's the one you want to earn. They can educate and inform your audience. They certainly can build relationships. They can be used to report industry and corporate news. You should be using images and videos to attract more views and natural links again. Embedding videos and multimedia assets, very important with press releases. Broaden the distribution of the content by using some paid syndication. And there are paid and organic ways to spread the news. What can you not do? You shouldn't be trying to use it for an SEO tactic. You can certainly generate inbound links, as we said in the previous slide, but by other people doing it off their own bat. Not that you put the press release there, syndicated it, and then it's just you made the link, basically. That's what Google's objecting to. So it shouldn't be part of your link building strategy. You shouldn't be doing optimized anchor text links, and certainly not keyword stuffing, like that one that we showed you with the wedding rings, getting married. If you had 5 links in one sentence, that is regarded as keyword stuffing. So what do you need to know? How to find the most relevant and effective keywords. And again, I can send you the link to the post that I did on using the new keyword planner. How to find hot news and items so that you can link your news to something that's already trending. How to use any links correctly in a release. How to write the headline. What becomes the title tag when it shows up in Google, and what becomes the description tag. And if you look at this one, if you see here, this is from their newsroom, David Lerner Associates. Just I picked this at random. This was the headline of one of their releases. And if you look at the top here in the little red box, right at the top, you'll see that that also becomes the title tag for that page. Now, this is a feature of the Pressfeed newsroom, but if you're building your own newsroom or you're building it in WordPress or whatever, you need to work with your webmaster or your IT team so that you figure out that what you put into your headline, when you have optimized your headline correctly, you then have a correct title tag. And the reason that this is important, you see here you've got the place to put your title, and that shows up on the page as the headline, and the description here is what goes in the feed. But where it also goes is when you search in Google, that tag becomes the headline here. It's the title, and your description will show up as the little blurb. And these things are really important because what people see when they look in Google search will either encourage them to click through, or they'll just look at it and go, oh no, that's boring and doesn't work for me, I'm not interested. You also need to know how and when to use hashtags, how to use and add rich snippets. Lisa and I were just talking about this earlier just before we started. Lisa, do you want to talk about the need for this Google authorship and how those little rich snippets show up under in Google and why that's important?
Sure. So even before this latest update about the links and press releases, Google's been putting a heavy emphasis on each piece of content needs to have a real author attached to it, and they're giving preference in serving up search results to, and there's advantages also to having your Google authorship connected with the website or blog that you're working on. So what we are talking about is that now with press releases, how we've always had at the end of a press release the media contact name and number. That's a real person, and their phone number. That's always been the case in traditional PR. Carrying into online digital PR, now we have our email address. So now take it one step further to even help in your search results and really stand out is to connect whoever your media contact is, say it's Lisa Buyer, so then my author profile would be connected with your website, with the company website, so that when that press release story comes up in search results, that there's a real author attached to it. And that's where this is going. Some companies are a little bit hesitant about that because they might think, well, what if that person leaves, and then what's going to happen? But if you think about it, that's really always been an issue. What if that person leaves and that person's name is listed on the press release as the media contact? So whatever process was in place for that, it would just, this would be part of it, the process of when somebody leaves. But the advantages of having the authorship connected with your public relations content outweigh the little disadvantages of problems like that.
Thank you, Lisa. So also how and where to host your release on your website, what should be in your online newsroom. And if you go to Pressfeed and you click on the newsroom tab, you will find a lot of information there. We have online newsroom checklists. We have best practices checklists. You can find all that kind of information on the Pressfeed newsroom. You also need to figure out where to use the photos and the images, how to optimize images for search, very important, how to optimize the video for search, and how to optimize your news content for social media messaging, because you need to also have what's showing up in your blogs and your tweets. That should also be discoverable. And then what paid social syndication and content promotion options are there so that you can not only have your news content be discoverable, but also have it spread and be seen by more people. So gaming the system is yesterday's news, but press releases definitely still work. But they work for the reason that they always worked, that we put them out for information, for education, for other journalists and media and bloggers to find them, to prompt them to write a story, to use that content, and so we earn the media, which is what we've always done. But press releases are now the natural social and mobile way of tomorrow. Lisa, any final comments you'd like to make?
I think the one thing I just want to underline is that this definitely should not be a roadblock in optimizing public relations and press releases and PR and social media. And, it doesn't mean that you have to keep your press release undiscoverable, make it as discoverable as possible. I still see people posting press releases as PDFs, and that's probably, if you're trying to hide your news, that's the best way to hide it. But, try to keep it as discoverable as possible and still use links appropriately. And, if you're doing it with your SEO department, don't abuse the system.
Joe? Is Joe still with us?
Yeah, Joe just keeps muting, so
Okay.
yeah, totally agree. I mean, no more abusing the system. I think press releases now become more valuable. I think scraper sites are probably going to go away or use other content. They're not going to be scraping the press releases as much. You get a higher quality releases coming through the system. So content marketing has been the big buzzword of the past year. I think since these changes happened in July with Google, content marketing becomes truly more important. And press releases are definitely a valid part of content marketing.
Thank you. Good. So I'm going to go through some of the questions that we have. One question is, if they're putting tracking links onto a link, can they still continue to do that? Joe?
Yes. A couple things here. If you use URL shorteners, use the big ones like goo.gl, bit.ly, or tinyurl for tracking, because they use what's called a 301 redirect, and any link value that may exist will still be passed. If you're going to use query strings, I would use a standard query string that Google is used to, like UTM equal, UTM source equals UTM medium equals, because they know how to handle that. They know what it is. If you're using something completely different that may look like you're serving a different page, I'd be very careful with those and make sure that you're no following those links, because that can make it look like you're spamming inadvertently.
Okay, another question. Do these rules apply to blog posts?
So I would say if you host a blog on your own website and you're linking to yourself, no. If you are using blogger.com, WordPress, maybe Tumblr, I think you've got to be a little more careful with these links than you used to be, but they didn't really call it out as much as they've called out press releases and article submission services. Because you're talking about doing this on one site versus doing it on a press release that's going to get distributed to 1,000 sites.
And we have another question here. What will happen to us if we continue to include the links that we know that reporters like and want? So I think that it's just a question of making sure that you don't have it in an anchor text link that looks like you're trying to do it for SEO value. And you have to learn to use this rel equals no follow.
I agree.
Yeah, me too. Use company names, don't use keywords.
Yeah. So what if you have agreements in place with other sites like Biz2Community and Alltop that they pick up your blogs and your press releases? Then what?
So that slope also got slipperier because in the new guidelines they call out advertorials, and I don't know if that would be considered an advertorial, but it's definitely borderline, and sponsored posts and things like that. So I still think you just have to be careful. It depends on the distribution. If you're creating a few links, fine. But if you're creating a document that's going to get distributed, I keep using the 1,000 number, but it's real. That's going to go to 1,000 websites, and you're creating 1,000 inbound links. You're creating a spam scenario.
Mm-hmm. So Lisa, on the question of the author bio and the Google authorship, so we get what a company's concern may be if somebody's working there and then they leave. But what if they're an agency or they're an outside consultant, you're not even on staff? Are they going to want your name on their press releases?
Well, I think that's a call that each organization is going to have to make. I mean, I've worked on the agency side with clients where the agency contact name, that person's contact name is on the press release as the media contact with the agency phone number. So, I mean, it's really that call needs to be made on a individual basis by each company. But again, I believe that especially if the author, so whoever is the media contact, is influential and is an author that Google recognizes as influential, that's only going to be to the company's advantage to have them associated with their press release. So I mean, I think it's going to raise the bar for the public relations professionals to get out there and get good content recognized by Google and start authoring content that's shared and has interactions related to it versus a writer that maybe doesn't. So it's it's going to help, and in the long run I think this is all going to be a good thing.
Joe, could you just expand a little bit on your statement that you made, use company names, not keywords?
Sure. So there was a couple infographics that came out after the Penguin 2.0 update, which was Google's update back in May. It's like May 24th. And one of the things that was looked at with sites that got penalized or hurt by the algorithm and sites that didn't was the variety of types of links within a link portfolio. So let's say you've got a site, very small local site, and it's only got 10 inbound links, and 9 of those 10 links are all keyword phrases, then that's dangerous. That site is probably going to look unnatural to Google. But if it's got 5 links to the site using HTTP, it's got 2 links using the name of the company, because that's a normal way people would link. It's got 1 link that says click here, and then it's got 2 links that have keywords. That's a reasonable distribution. That doesn't look like it was over-optimized. So when I say use a brand keyword, that's a normal way people would link. Click here is a normal way people would link. Read more is a normal way people would link. Those are, for SEO purposes, those are terrible links. But to have a real-looking backlink portfolio, that they happen. I mean, that's natural. So that's got to be part of the mix.
Good. So what if you want to put in a link in the release that it's about a launch of a product and you want to link to the product page on your site? How do you do it?
So I don't like this term, but this term was used several times to me yesterday. Use the naked URL.
Right.
Use the plain HTTP and point directly to that product page.
Right. So there was a comment here now. It looks as though if we use a wire service that has their head on straight and they've done the rel equals no follow, we're going to be good. But I would still say don't put in 5 anchor text links, even so. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, that's a great point, because just because the wire service adds the no-follow doesn't mean that the way the article may be picked up and distributed is going to also use the no-follow. So it's definitely safer not to use optimized keyword anchor text links.
Right.
But if the service does have the no-follow and you are a little risk tolerant, I mean, I would try a couple of them and let Google decide, because that is the beauty of the no-follow, which I mentioned earlier, that the no-follow becomes Google's choice of whether to give that link value or not.
Right. Okay. We have time for a few more questions. Let me see if I think we're actually out of questions. So I just want to remind you that you can find most of the information that you need in my book, Smart News, and that you can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Sally Falco, at Lisa Beyer. Joe, what is your Twitter handle?
At JLaratro.
At
JLaratro.
And we, the 3 of us, will collaborate on writing a blog post about how to do the no-follow and all the other things that we spoke about, and we will email that to you. So thanks very much for being with us for this hour. I would like again to say thank you very much to Joe at the last minute for jumping on for all our technical questions. And Lisa, really appreciate last week and this week. And Lisa also has a book coming out next week, so we will email you her book when it's out.
And PR Secrets.
Social PR Secrets. Thank you, Lisa. And I had a question earlier from a professor saying, what do I tell my students to write? Well, tell them to buy this book and Lisa's book and they'll be good to go. All right, thanks very much, guys. We'll see you. This one was now in September, so we have another one later in September, but you'll be on our list for all the videos, for all our webinar, and you'll get a notification for the next webinar. Thanks very much.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Sally.
Thanks, guys.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.